The smell hit me first. Not perfume, cologne. Expensive cologne that sure as hell wasn't mine. I was sitting in my workshop at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, nursing a beer and pretending to organize screws by size, when Lila stumbled through the back door. She moved like someone trying too hard to look sober, all careful steps and deliberate movements. "Hey, honey," she said, her voice pitched just a little too high. "You're up late." I looked up from my workbench, taking in the sight of my wife of 12 years. Her lipstick was gone, her hair looked finger-combed, and that cologne smell was rolling off her in waves. Drew Mather's cologne. I'd know that overpriced garbage anywhere. "Yeah, well, someone's got to keep the lights on," I said, setting down my beer. "How was girls' night with Morgan?" Lila's smile flickered for just a second. "Oh, you know, same old drama. Rita's having problems with her boyfriend again." "Uh-huh." I stood up, wiping my hands on a shop rag. "And where exactly did you girls go tonight?" "Just the Larkspur Social Club. Nothing fancy." She was already backing toward the door. I'm exhausted, going to shower and head to bed. The Larkspur Social Club. The same place where Drew Mathers had been posting Instagram stories all evening. I knew because I'd been watching, waiting to see if my suspicions were right. They were. "Lila." She stopped, hand on the door frame. "You might want to change your story. Drew's been posting pictures from Marcello's downtown all night, unless the Larkspur suddenly got a lot fancier and moved 20 miles south." The color drained from her face. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "I don't know what you're implying, Cal, but I don't like your tone." "My tone?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Honey, you haven't heard my tone yet." She fled upstairs. I heard the shower running 5 minutes later. I sat back down at my workbench and opened another beer. Cal Bishop, 42 years old, owner of Bishop Construction Supply, and apparently the last person in town to figure out his wife was screwing his neighbor. The funny thing was, I wasn't even surprised. Disappointed, maybe. Angry, definitely. But surprised? Not really. Lila had been pulling away for months, finding excuses to spend time with Morgan and her perfect husband Drew, always talking about how successful he was, how romantic, how he treated Morgan like a queen. I should have seen it coming when she started wearing makeup to run errands. Should have known when she bought new lingerie and I never saw it. Should have figured it out when she started picking fights about everything, my work clothes, my friends, my lack of ambition. But I'd been busy. Business was good. I had 3 crews running jobs across 2 counties, and I figured marriage had its ups and downs. I figured we'd work through it like we always had. I figured wrong. The water upstairs shut off. I heard her moving around, probably scrubbing off the evidence of her evening. I wondered how long it had been going on, weeks, months. How many times had she come home to me smelling like another man? My phone buzzed. A text from my foreman, Frankie. "You still up? Need to talk." I called him back. Frankie Torino had worked for me for 8 years, and he wasn't the type to text after midnight unless something was seriously wrong. "Cal?" "Jesus, finally. Listen, I was at Murphy's pub tonight, and I saw something you need to know about." "Let me guess. Lila and Drew Mathers." Silence on the other end. Then, "Shit, you already know." "I suspected. Now I know. What did you see?" "They were in a corner booth, hands all over each other, kissing like teenagers. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know if I should say something." "You did the right thing calling." I rubbed my forehead. How obvious were they being? Obvious enough that half the bar was talking about it. Marina behind the bar looked like she wanted to call you herself. Marina. She'd been slinging drinks at Murphy's for 15 years and knew everyone's business before they did. If she was talking about it, the whole town would know by morning. "Thanks for the heads up, Frankie." "What are you going to do?" Good question. What was I going to do? Confront her? Demand an explanation? File for divorce? All of the above? "I'm going to think about it," I said. "Get some sleep." We've got that delivery to the Morrison site first thing. I hung up and finished my beer in the quiet workshop. Upstairs, Lila was probably already in bed, pretending to sleep. Tomorrow, she'd act like nothing happened, maybe even pick a fight to throw me off the scent. But I knew now, and knowing changed everything. I'd built my business from nothing, turned a $1,000 loan into a company that employed 15 people. I'd survived my old man walking out when I was 10, my mother's cancer, 2 recessions, and more backstabbing competitors than I could count. I sure as hell wasn't going to let my cheating wife and her boyfriend destroy me without a fight. The question wasn't what I was going to do. The question was how much they were going to regret pushing me this far. I turned off the workshop lights and headed inside. Time to start planning. Thursday morning came with the kind of gray drizzle that makes everything look tired. I was loading invoices into my truck when Lila emerged from the house, dressed for her job at the county planning office. She looked refreshed, cheerful even. Amazing what a good night's sleep could do for a guilty conscience. "Morning, honey," she called out, like we were still the happy couple from our Christmas cards. "Don't forget we're supposed to go to Morgan and Drew's barbecue Saturday." I looked up from my paperwork. "Are we now?" "I told you about it last week. It's their anniversary party." She was using her patient voice, the one that suggested I was being deliberately difficult. "All our friends will be there." Our friends. Right. The same friends who'd been watching her make out with Drew Mathers in public and hadn't bothered to mention it to me. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. Something in my tone made her pause. She studied my face for a moment, looking for cracks in my composure. I kept my expression neutral. 12 years of marriage had taught me how to hide what I was thinking when necessary. "Good," she said finally. "I'll pick up some wine on the way home." She climbed into her Honda and backed out of the driveway. I watched her go, then pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. Dave Brennan had handled the legal work when I incorporated my business. He was smart, thorough, and had no patience for bullshit. Exactly what I needed. "Cal, what's going on?" "I need to know my options, Dave. Lila's having an affair." "Shit. I'm sorry to hear that. How sure are you?" "Sure enough." "What do I need to know about divorce in this state?" "Well, it's no fault, so the affair itself won't affect the settlement much. But if you can prove she's been hiding assets or spending marital money on her boyfriend, that's different. You got any evidence of that?" "Not yet." "Then start gathering it. Bank statements, credit card bills, anything that shows unusual spending. And Cal, don't do anything stupid. Don't follow her. Don't confront the guy. Don't give her ammunition to claim you're abusive or threatening." "I'm not going to touch him, Dave." "Good. Let me know what you find." I spent the morning at the Morrison job site, watching my crew frame up a new addition, while my mind worked through possibilities. Lila had access to our joint checking account, but I handled most of the finances. If she was spending money on Drew, she was probably using credit cards. That afternoon, I swung by the house while she was at work. Our home office was in the spare bedroom, all organized files and matching furniture that Lila had picked out. I found our credit card statements in the filing cabinet, neatly arranged by month. The pattern jumped out immediately. Starting 3 months ago, there were charges I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together, hotel rooms in the city, a jewelry store purchase for $300 that I'd never seen the result of. I photographed everything with my phone, then put the statements back exactly where I'd found them. 3 months. This had been going on for 3 months, and I'd been oblivious. My phone rang. Lila. "Hey, honey, I'm going to be late tonight. We have a planning commission meeting that's running long." "How late?" "Probably not home until 10 or 11. Don't wait up." I checked the county website. No planning commission meeting scheduled for today. "Okay, I'll grab dinner with Frankie." "Sounds good. Love you." She hung up before I could respond. I sat in our home office, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not just anger anymore, something harder. I called Frankie. Feel like doing some surveillance tonight? What kind of surveillance? The kind where we sit in a parking lot and watch my wife lie to my face. Frankie was quiet for a moment. You sure you want to see this? I need to see it. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. All right. Pick me up at 7. We followed Lila from her office to Marcello's, the same upscale Italian place where Drew had been posting pictures earlier in the week. She was already 20 minutes late when she hurried inside, wearing the black dress she'd bought last month and claimed was for work events. Drew was waiting at a corner table, standing to kiss her when she arrived. Not a friendly peck on the cheek. A real kiss, the kind that made the elderly couple at the next table look away in embarrassment. Jesus, Frankie muttered. They're not even trying to hide it. We watched them through the restaurant window for an hour. They held hands across the table. Drew fed her bites of his dessert. She laughed at everything he said, touching his arm, leaning in close. It was like watching strangers, except one of them was wearing my wedding ring. Seen enough? Frankie asked. Not yet. They left the restaurant together, Drew's hand on the small of Lila's back as he guided her toward his BMW. They drove to the Marriott downtown, disappearing into the lobby together. Now I've seen enough, I said. Frankie was quiet on the drive back to his place. Finally, he said, What are you going to do? I'm going to that barbecue Saturday. Cal, don't worry. I'm not going to cause a scene. I'm just going to have a conversation. That was a lie, and we both knew it. But Frankie didn't push. He understood that some conversations were a long time coming. I dropped him off and drove home to my empty house. Lila wouldn't be back for hours. I had time to think, to plan, to decide exactly how I wanted this to play out. By the time she came home at midnight, smelling like Drew's cologne again, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Saturday afternoon arrived bright and clear, perfect weather for a backyard barbecue and a long overdue reckoning. I spent the morning at the shop, catching up on paperwork and letting my anger simmer down to something cold and manageable. Lila was in full performance mode when I got home, bustling around the kitchen like the perfect wife. She'd made her famous potato salad and was arranging flowers she'd bought for Morgan. You should probably change, she said, eyeing my jeans and work shirt. This is kind of a nice event. I'm fine. Cal, please. Morgan's whole family will be there, plus people from Drew's work. Can't you just put on khakis and a button-down? I looked at my wife, really looked at her. She was wearing a sundress I'd never seen before, her hair done in soft waves, makeup applied with care. She looked beautiful. She also looked like a woman getting dressed up for her lover's party. You're right, I said. This is a special occasion. I should dress appropriately. Relief flickered across her face. Thank you. I just want everything to go smoothly. I went upstairs and put on my good jeans, a clean shirt, and the boots I saved for special occasions. When I came back down, Lila frowned. That's not exactly what I meant. It's exactly what I meant. We drove to the Mathers house in tense silence. Drew and Morgan lived in Hillcrest Estates, one of those suburban developments where every house looked like it came from the same catalog. Perfect lawns, perfect driveways, perfect lives with perfect secrets. Cars lined the street. Through the backyard gate, I could hear laughter and conversation. The sound of people having a good time, celebrating 15 years of marriage while one of the guests of honor was sleeping with someone else's wife. Remember, Lila said as we walked up the driveway, be nice to Drew. I know you two haven't always gotten along, but this is important to Morgan. Don't worry. Drew and I are going to have a very memorable conversation. The backyard was crowded with familiar faces, neighbors, co-workers, the usual suspects from our social circle. Morgan rushed over to greet us, looking genuinely happy to see us both. Lila, Cal, I'm so glad you could make it. She hugged us both, her smile warm and real. Drew's over by the grill. He'll be so excited to see you. I bet he would. Drew was holding court near the barbecue, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. He was telling some story that had his audience laughing, playing the role of charming host to perfection. He saw me coming, and his smile flickered, just for a second. Then it was back in place, bright and false. "Cal, great to see you, buddy." He stuck out his hand. "Thanks for coming." I shook his hand, noting how soft it was. Office hands. Hands that had never built anything, never fixed anything, never created anything of value. "Wouldn't miss it, Drew. 15 years of marriage. That's really something." "It sure is. Morgan and I are blessed." "Blessed." I nodded thoughtfully. "That's one word for it." Something in my tone made him step back slightly. Around us, conversations continued, but I could feel a tension starting to shift our way. "Can I get you a beer?" Drew asked. "I've got some great craft stuff in the cooler." "I'm good. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." "Oh? What's that?" I glanced around the yard. Lila was across the patio, deep in conversation with Morgan and a few other women. Perfect. "I wanted to thank you," I said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "Thank me?" "For taking such good care of my wife lately. All those dinners, those hotel rooms, really going above and beyond." The color drained from Drew's face. Conversations around us began to stop as people tuned in to what was happening. "Cal, I think there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. I've got credit card receipts, photos, witness statements, the whole package." I smiled, but there was nothing friendly about it. I especially liked the pictures from Marcello's. "You two looked so happy together." "Cal," Drew's voice was barely a whisper. "What's wrong, Drew? You look like you've seen a ghost. Or maybe like someone just caught you screwing their wife." The patio had gone dead silent. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye was on us. Across the yard, Lila was staring at me with an expression of pure horror. Morgan appeared at Drew's side, confusion written across her face. "What's going on? What are you talking about?" I looked at her, this nice woman who'd been nothing but kind to me, who was about to have her world destroyed. For a second, I almost felt bad about what I was going to do. Almost. "I'm talking about your husband and my wife, Morgan. They've been having an affair for 3 months. The words hit like a physical blow. Morgan actually staggered, her hand going to her throat. "That's not true," she whispered. "That can't be true." "Marcello's restaurant, Tuesday night, the Marriott downtown, credit card charges for jewelry I've never seen. Want me to keep going?" Drew finally found his voice. "You're lying. You're making this up because you're jealous." I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo I'd taken through the restaurant window. Drew and Lila, kissing across the dinner table. "Am I?" Morgan looked at the photo, then at her husband, then at Lila, who was pushing through the crowd toward us. The pieces were falling into place, and I could see the moment when Morgan's perfect world shattered. "Drew?" Her voice was small, broken. "Is this true?" Drew opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Lila reached us, her face flushed with panic and anger. "Cal, stop this right now. You're drunk and you're embarrassing yourself." "I haven't had a drink yet, honey. But you're right about one thing. This is embarrassing for you." "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know about the hotels, the dinners, the lies. I know you told me you were at a planning commission meeting Thursday night, while you were actually screwing Drew at the Marriott." The crowd around us had grown. People were pulling out phones, recording the confrontation. This would be all over social media within the hour. Morgan was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face as she stared at her husband. "How could you do this to me? To our family?" "Morgan, I can explain," Drew started. "Explain what?" I interrupted. "Explain how you've been lying to your wife for months? Explain how you've been using my credit cards to pay for your affair? Explain how you're such a coward you can't even admit it when you're caught red-handed? Cal, please. Lila grabbed my arm. Let's go home and talk about this privately. I shook her off. Privately? Like how you've been handling your relationship with Drew privately? No, I think we're way past private. Drew finally found some backbone. You need to calm down, Cal. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene? I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Drew, you've been making a scene for 3 months. I'm just providing the finale. That's enough. Drew stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. I don't care what you think you know, but you're not going to talk to me like this in my own backyard. Your backyard? I looked around at the crowd of people watching us, phones out, recording everything. Funny thing about backyards, Drew, eventually, all the shit comes to the surface. That's when he took a swing at me. Drew's punch was about what I expected from a guy who spent his days in conference rooms. Slow, telegraphed, and poorly aimed. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him past me, then gave him a little help with a hand on his back. He stumbled into the barbecue grill, knocking over a tray of burgers and sending charcoal flying. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. Drew scrambled to his feet, his polo shirt covered in ash and grease, his face red with humiliation and anger. You son of a bitch! He came at me again, but Frankie appeared out of nowhere and caught him in a bear hug. Easy there, Romeo, Frankie said. Let's not do anything we'll regret. Get off me! Drew struggled against Frankie's grip. He attacked me! Actually, said a voice from the crowd, he attacked you. Rita Castellanos, one of Lila's co-workers, was holding up her phone. I got the whole thing on video. Drew threw the first punch. I looked at Rita with new appreciation. She'd never been my biggest fan, but apparently watching Lila destroy her marriage had changed her perspective. Thank you, Rita. I appreciate an honest witness. Lila was at Drew's side now, helping him brush ash off his shirt. The gesture was intimate, automatic, the kind of thing you do for someone you care about. Morgan saw it too, and I watched her face crumble. Oh my God, Morgan whispered. You really are having an affair. Morgan, I can explain, Lila started. Explain what? Morgan's voice was getting louder, sharper. Explain how you've been pretending to be my friend while you screw my husband? Explain how you've been sitting in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, giving me advice about my marriage while you're destroying it? The crowd was riveted now. This was better than reality TV, and it was happening right in their neighborhood. It's not like that, Lila said. It just happened. We didn't plan it. You didn't plan it? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken of our credit card statements. Marcello's Restaurant, February 15th. The Marriott, February 22nd. Romano's Steakhouse, March 1st. The Marriott again, March 8th. You want me to keep reading? Because I've got 3 months of receipts that say you planned it just fine. Drew had stopped struggling against Frankie's grip. He was staring at me with a mixture of fear and hatred. How long have you known? He asked. Long enough to document everything. Long enough to talk to a lawyer. Long enough to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. Cal, please. Lila's voice was desperate now. Let's go home. We can work this out. Work it out? I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Honey, there's nothing to work out. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. Morgan was sobbing openly now, her friends clustering around her, shooting poisonous looks at Drew and Lila. The party was officially over, but nobody was leaving. This was too good to miss. I want you out of my house, Morgan said to Drew, her voice shaking with rage. I want you out tonight. Morgan, please, let's talk about this. Talk? Morgan laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. You want to talk? Fine. Let's talk about how you've been lying to my face for months. Let's talk about how you've been using our credit cards to wine and dine your whore. Hey, Lila snapped. You don't get to call me names. I'll call you whatever I want, Morgan shot back. You destroyed my marriage. You destroyed my family. You're lucky I'm just calling you names. Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, pushed through the crowd. She was 85 years old and had lived in this neighborhood longer than anyone else. When she spoke, people listened. Drew Mathers, she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet patio. Your mother would be ashamed of you. Drew flinched like he'd been slapped. Mrs. Henderson had known his family for decades, had watched him grow up. Her disapproval carried weight that no amount of charm could overcome. Mrs. Henderson, this is a private matter. Private? The old woman snorted. Son, you made it public the minute you decided to parade your affair around town. Did you think nobody would notice? Did you think people wouldn't talk? She turned to address the crowd. I've lived in this neighborhood for 53 years. I've seen marriages come and go, watched families grow up, seen good people and bad people, but I've never seen anything as shameless as this. The crowd murmured agreement. Drew and Lila were being tried in the court of public opinion, and the verdict was unanimous. We should go, Lila said quietly. Yeah, I agreed. You should. Both of you. Drew finally broke free of Frankie's grip and straightened his shirt. This isn't over, Cal. Oh, it's over. Your marriage is over, your reputation is over, and if you're smart, you'll make sure our interactions are over too. Is that a threat? I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear me. Drew, I build things for a living. I know how to tear them down too. You've seen what I can do to your marriage and your social life. Don't make me get creative. His face went pale, but he nodded. Message received. Lila grabbed his arm. Come on, let's just go. They pushed through the crowd toward the gate, heads down, faces burning with shame. The gathered neighbors and friends parted to let them pass, but nobody said goodbye. Nobody wished them luck. They were pariahs now, outcasts from the community they'd once been part of. As they reached the gate, Lila turned back to look at me. For a moment, I saw something that might have been regret in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by defiance. You'll regret this, Cal, she called out. You'll regret humiliating me like this. I smiled and raised my voice so everyone could hear. The only thing I regret, Lila, is not doing it sooner. They disappeared through the gate. A moment later, we heard car doors slam and an engine start. Drew's BMW pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. The patio was quiet for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. Others joined in, until the entire crowd was applauding. I stood in the middle of it, surrounded by neighbors and friends who'd just watched me destroy my marriage in spectacular fashion. Frankie appeared at my side. Well, that went better than expected. Did it? Nobody called the cops, nobody got arrested, and you got to tell the truth in front of half the neighborhood. I'd call that a win. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was a win, but it sure didn't feel like one. Morgan approached us, her eyes red from crying but her voice steady. Cal, I'm sorry, I had no idea. It's not your fault, Morgan. You're as much a victim here as I am. What are you going to do now? Good question. What was I going to do now? My marriage was over, my wife was gone, and I was standing in my neighbor's backyard being applauded for destroying two families. I'm going to go home, I said. I'm going to have a drink, and I'm going to start figuring out what comes next. If you need anything, I know where to find you. I walked through the crowd toward the gate, accepting handshakes and pats on the back from people who'd just witnessed the most dramatic moment of their suburban lives. At the gate, I turned back to look at the party one last time. The barbecue was ruined, the food was cold, and the guest of honor was crying on her best friend's shoulder. But people were staying, talking, processing what they'd just seen. This would be the story they told for years to come. The day Cal Bishop exposed the affair at the Mathers anniversary party. I walked home alone, leaving my truck in Drew's driveway. I'd get it later. Right now, I needed to walk, to think, to process what I'd just done. The house was quiet when I got there. Empty. For the first time in 12 years, I was truly alone. I opened a beer and sat on my back porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood where I'd just become the most talked-about man in town. My phone was buzzing constantly. Text messages, missed calls, friend requests on social media. The story was spreading, the video was being shared, and by tomorrow morning, everyone in town would know what Drew Mathers and Lila Bishop had been up to. But sitting there in the gathering darkness, I realized something. This wasn't the end of the story. This was just the beginning. Drew had threatened me. Lila had promised I'd regret my actions. They thought this was over, that they could slink away and start fresh somewhere else. They were wrong. I'd spent 12 years building a life with Lila, 12 years trusting her, supporting her, loving her. She'd thrown it all away for a few months of excitement with a man who didn't have the courage to leave his own wife. The public humiliation was just the opening act. The real show was about to begin. Sunday morning brought a parade of visitors to my front door. First was Rita Castellanos, carrying a box of donuts and a thermos of coffee. "Figured you might need some fuel," she said when I let her in. "Hell of a thing yesterday." "Thanks, Rita. I appreciate you speaking up." She settled into my kitchen chair and poured coffee for both of us. I should have said something sooner. I knew what was going on. "How long have you known?" "About 6 weeks. I saw them at Romano's when I was there with my sister. Lila told me she was having dinner with a client, but she was all over that man like a cheap suit." Rita shook her head. "I kept thinking she'd come to her senses, end it before anyone got hurt. Instead, she kept lying. She's been lying about more than just the affair, Cal. At work, she's been telling people you're controlling, that you don't support her career, that you're holding her back." I set down my coffee cup. "What?" "She's been building a case, making herself look like the victim. I think she was planning to leave you anyway, make it look like your fault." The pieces clicked into place. The fights she'd been picking, the criticism, the way she'd been pulling away. She hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been preparing for war. "What else do you know?" "Drew's been having problems at work. His sales numbers are down, and there are rumors about him being inappropriate with female clients. His boss has been asking questions." "Interesting. Very interesting." After Rita left, I called Dave Brennan. "Cal, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine, but I need to know something. If Lila tries to claim I was abusive or controlling, what kind of evidence would she need?" "Witness statements, mostly. Police reports if she called the cops. Medical records if she claimed physical abuse." "Why?" I told him about Rita's warning. Dave listened without interrupting, then sighed. "This is why I told you not to confront them publicly. Now she can claim you're unstable, that you humiliated her in front of the whole neighborhood. Can she use that against me in the divorce? She can try. But if you've got evidence of the affair and the financial infidelity, it'll be harder for her to paint herself as the victim. Just be careful, Cal. Don't give her any more ammunition." After I hung up, I spent the morning going through our finances more carefully. What I found made my blood boil. The affair had cost us almost $8,000 in 3 months. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts, even a weekend trip to the coast that she'd claimed was a work conference. $8,000 of our money spent on her boyfriend. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Cal? This is Morgan. Morgan Mathers." "Morgan, how are you doing?" "I've been better." Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. "I kicked Drew out last night. He's staying at his brother's place." "I'm sorry you're going through this." "Don't be sorry. You did me a favor. I needed to know the truth." She paused. "Cal, I found something you should know about." "What's that?" "Drew's been keeping a second phone. I found it in his sock drawer when I was packing his things. There are text messages between him and Lila going back 4 months. 4 months. Even longer than I'd thought. What do the messages say? Lot of sexual stuff I don't want to repeat. But there's other things too. They were planning to leave us both. Drew was going to ask for a divorce after his promotion came through at work. What promotion? He's been up for regional sales manager. Big raise, company car, the works. The decision was supposed to come down this week. Was supposed to. Past tense. Morgan, can you forward me those text messages? Already did. Check your email. I opened my laptop and found Morgan's message. The attached screenshots made for ugly reading. Lila and Drew planning their future together, talking about how much happier they'd be without their boring spouses. Drew promising to take care of her financially once his promotion came through. There was something else too. Messages about Drew's boss, complaints about having to play politics and kiss ass to get ahead. Lila encouraging him to stand up for himself, to demand what he deserved. I forwarded everything to Dave Brennan, then made another call. Bishop Construction Supply. This is Cal. Cal, it's Tom Morrison. I heard about what happened yesterday. Jesus, man, I'm sorry. Tom Morrison was one of my biggest clients, a general contractor who'd been using my company for supplies for 5 years. He was also Drew's boss. Thanks, Tom. It's been a rough couple of days. I bet. Listen, I wanted to give you a heads up. Drew Mathers came to see me this morning. He's claiming you attacked him yesterday, that you're unstable and dangerous. What did you tell him? I told him I'd seen the video on Facebook, and it looked to me like he threw the first punch. I also told him that his personal life was affecting his professional judgment. How so? He's been distracted for months, missing appointments, losing focus. I was already having doubts about his promotion. After yesterday and after he came in here making demands and threats. Well, let's just say he's not getting the regional manager job. I felt a grim satisfaction. Drew's perfect plan was falling apart piece by piece. Tom, I appreciate you telling me this. Drew Mathers is a snake, Cal. Always has been. I should have seen through his act sooner. After Tom hung up, I sat back in my chair and considered my options. Drew and Lila thought they were going to ride off into the sunset together, funded by his big promotion and my divorce settlement. Instead, Drew was unemployed and homeless, and Lila was about to discover that adultery came with consequences. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I called Frankie. How do you feel about doing a little detective work? What kind of detective work? The kind that involves following Drew Mathers and documenting his activities. Cal, you sure that's a good idea? I'm not going to touch him, Frankie. I just want to know where he's staying, what he's doing, who he's talking to. Information is power. All right, but we do this smart and we do it legal. Wouldn't have it any other way. That afternoon, Frankie and I followed Drew from his brother's house to a strip mall across town. He went into a pawn shop, stayed for 20 minutes, then came out empty-handed. Next stop was a payday loan place. He's broke, Frankie observed. Lost his meal ticket when the promotion fell through. Good. Let him sweat. Drew's next stop was the Marriott, the same hotel where he'd been meeting Lila. We watched him go inside, then come out 10 minutes later looking frustrated. Probably can't afford a room anymore, I said. His last stop was the most interesting. A law office downtown, the kind of place that advertised on bus benches and late-night TV. Cheap divorce lawyers for people who couldn't afford better. Think he's filing for divorce? Frankie asked. Or getting advice on how to protect himself when Morgan files. We followed him back to his brother's house, a modest ranch in a working-class neighborhood. Drew's BMW looked out of place in the driveway, like a peacock in a chicken coop. What now? Frankie asked. Now we wait. Drew's world is falling apart, and desperate people make mistakes. When he makes his, I'll be ready. That evening, I got a call from Lila. She was staying at her sister's place across town, and she sounded tired. Cal, we need to talk. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Can you meet me somewhere? Where? The Larkspur Social Club. 1 hour. The Larkspur Social Club was neutral ground, a place where we'd had good times and better days. It was also public, which meant she couldn't accuse me of threatening or intimidating her. I'll be there. I arrived first and took a corner booth where I could see the entire restaurant. Marina was behind the bar, and she gave me a sympathetic nod when I walked in. Lila arrived 20 minutes late, looking like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. I hadn't seen her look this rough since her mother's funeral. She slid into the booth across from me without saying hello. "You've ruined everything," she said. "I've ruined everything. That's rich, coming from someone who's been screwing the neighbor for 4 months. It wasn't supposed to happen this way." "How was it supposed to happen, Lila? You and Drew were going to leave us both anyway. I just accelerated the timeline." She looked surprised that I knew about their plans. "You don't understand. What Drew and I have is real. It's not just some cheap affair. $8,000 says otherwise." "What?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the spreadsheet I'd created, documenting every penny she'd spent on her relationship with Drew. $8,000 of our money, spent on hotels and dinners and gifts for your boyfriend. That's not love, Lila. That's theft. She stared at the numbers, her face going pale. "You can't prove that money was spent on Drew. Credit card receipts, restaurant surveillance footage, hotel records. I can prove every penny of it." She was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "What do you want?" "I want you to admit what you did. I want you to take responsibility for destroying our marriage, and I want you to understand that there are consequences for your choices." "And if I don't?" I didn't wait for her to respond. I let the silence sit between us like a weight, because silence forces people to hear the echo of their own choices. The Larkspur Social Club had always been the kind of place where problems were supposed to stay politely behind smiles, low amber lighting, soft jazz, bartenders who remembered your usual and never asked questions. Tonight, it felt like a courtroom wearing a velvet jacket. Lila's hands were wrapped around her glass, like it was the only steady thing left in her life. She tried to steady her breathing, tried to pull herself back together the way she always did in public. But the small cracks were everywhere now, and once you see cracks, you can't unsee them. "You don't get to do that," she said, her voice tight. "You don't get to threaten me." I tilted my head. "It's not a threat. It's a forecast. I'm not inventing consequences, Lila. I'm just refusing to absorb them for you." Her eyes flashed. "You're angry and you're spiraling, and you're saying things you don't mean." I gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's what you tell yourself when you want to believe I'm still predictable." She leaned forward, lowering her voice like secrecy could still save her. "You're going to destroy my career over an affair?" "You already tried to destroy mine," I said evenly. "You just did it quietly, in meetings and side conversations, while you smiled at me over dinner. That's what you didn't count on, me finding out the story you've been telling other people." Her face drained a shade paler. "What story?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched her eyes flicker, watched her mind running through the last few months like a search history she couldn't delete. The way she'd suddenly become overwhelmed at work whenever I asked about her late nights. The way she'd started saying my name in that careful tone when friends were around, the tone that implied I was unreasonable and she was patient. The way she'd framed every conflict as something I started. "You've been painting me as controlling," I said. "You've been telling people you're scared of how I'll react. You've been laying groundwork, so if this ever blew up, you'd already have a clean narrative and I'd be the villain." Lila's lips parted, then closed again. "That's not—" "It is," I cut in. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. "And I'm done letting you write the script." Her fingers tightened around the glass so hard her knuckles went white. "Even if any of that is true," she said, trying to regain altitude. You can't prove it. I leaned back. I don't have to prove it the way you think. I just have to stop protecting you from the truth. That made her inhale sharply, and she glanced around the room as if she suddenly remembered there were people here, other booths, other conversations, other ears. She'd always been afraid of embarrassment more than guilt. It was one of the reasons she'd gotten so good at smiling through things that should have broken her. You're doing this to hurt me, she said, a plea disguised as accusation. I'm doing this to end it, I replied. Hurt is a byproduct. The point is that it stops. Lila swallowed, eyes shining. Cal, please. I messed up. I know I did, but you're acting like I'm a monster. I didn't move. You're not a monster, I said. You're just a person who made selfish choices and expected someone else to pay the bill. Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment she looked genuinely lost, like the version of her that believed she could always pivot and smooth things over had finally hit a wall. She took a shaky breath. Drew isn't what you think he is, I added, because there was no reason to sugarcoat the part she hadn't seen yet. And the fact that you don't even know that tells me exactly how deep this relationship really goes. Stop, she whispered, but there was no force in it. Stop talking about him like you know him. I know enough, I said. I know the pattern. I know the debts. I know the calls he doesn't answer. I know the business trip last month that was actually him trying to outrun a problem he created. Lila blinked rapidly. You're making things up. I shook my head once. You want me to be making things up because, if I'm not, then you didn't just betray me. You betrayed yourself too. Her breathing turned uneven. She stared at the table like she was trying to anchor herself to something real. Then she looked up, and her voice came out smaller. What? What do you mean, debts? I let a pause stretch. Not for cruelty, for precision. The kind that don't go away because you fall in love with a new version of your life. The kind that show up as loan payments he doesn't talk about, and investments that never seem to pay out, and a credit score that's held together with excuses. Lila's mouth trembled. He told me he was doing great. Of course he did, I said. That's what men like him do. They sell you a future because the present is a mess. She stared at me, caught between denial and dread. The denial was familiar. It was her favorite shelter. But dread was creeping in now, slow and unstoppable, because dread comes when the math stops working. You talked to someone, she said suddenly. You investigated him. I listened. I corrected. I paid attention. I did what you should have done before you gambled your marriage on him. Her eyes filled again, and she shook her head like she was trying to shake off the implications. You don't understand. Drew makes me feel seen. I looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, He made you feel worshipped. That's not the same thing. The words hit hard. Her face twisted, and she looked away like she'd been slapped. It wasn't because I'd insulted her. It was because I'd named something she didn't want to admit. Cal, she said, voice cracking, if you do this, if you tell people, if you drag my name through, I'm not dragging your name anywhere, I said. Your actions already did that. I'm just not carrying it anymore. She pressed her fingers to her temple, breathing through her nose, trying to keep herself from breaking down in public. Then she reached for the one lever she thought still worked. What do you want? She asked. Money? The house? I'll sign whatever, just don't do this. Don't make it worse. I studied her, and for a second I almost felt that old reflex, the instinct to protect her from consequences, because watching someone you once loved fall apart is brutal, even when they earned it. Almost. There's nothing to bargain with, I said. You can't negotiate your way out of reality. Her eyes snapped up. So you're just going to ruin me. I shook my head. No, I'm going to remove myself. And when people ask why, I'm not going to lie. That was the part she feared most. Not my anger, not my threats, my honesty. She opened her mouth to speak, but I stood, sliding my chair back gently, the sound small but decisive in the low-lit room. Lila watched me like she was watching a door close on a life she'd assumed would always be there if she needed it. "Cal," she whispered, and this time it wasn't manipulation. It was panic. "Please, we can fix this." I leaned in slightly, not in tenderness, but in clarity. "There's nothing to fix, Lila. Fixing is for accidents. This was a choice." Her face crumpled, and she looked down fast, as if staring at the table could keep her tears from spilling. I took my coat, then paused, because some truths deserve to be said without heat. "And one more thing," I said. "Don't go home tonight." Her head jerked up. "What?" "You heard me," I said. "Find somewhere else to stay, a friend, a hotel, whatever you want, but don't go home." "Cal, you can't just—" "I can," I said. "I am. I'm changing the locks tomorrow." Her lips parted in disbelief, and I could see her mind scrambling for another angle, another tactic. But there were no tactics left when the person you've been underestimating finally stops playing your game. I walked out of the Larkspur Social Club into the cool evening air, and the city felt sharper than it had in months. Colder, cleaner, like the world was finally in focus. The streetlights cast long shadows on the sidewalk. Cars moved past in steady waves, indifferent to the private wars happening inside dim booths. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This isn't over. I stopped under a street lamp, the light catching my breath in pale fog. For a second, I just stared at the message, letting the simplicity of it settle. No name, no context, just a warning that assumed I'd be intimidated. I wasn't. I typed back with the same calm I'd used all night, the calm that comes when you've already mourned what you're losing. "You're right, it's not." Then I slipped the phone back into my pocket and kept walking, because the war wasn't a screaming match or a dramatic scene in a restaurant. The war was paperwork, witnesses, timelines, and truth spoken out loud in rooms where lies used to thrive. And the first real strike had already landed. Monday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was in my workshop, drinking coffee and planning my day, when 2 police cars pulled into my driveway. 4 officers got out, including Sergeant Martinez, who'd been a customer of mine for years. "Morning, Cal," Martinez said as I met them at my back door. "We need to talk." "What about?" "Drew Mathers filed a complaint. Says you've been stalking him, threatening him, harassing him." I invited them inside and poured coffee while Martinez explained the situation. According to Drew, I'd been following him around town, making threatening phone calls and sending intimidating text messages. "That's interesting," I said when he finished, "because I've been here all morning, and my phone records will show I haven't called or texted anyone except my lawyer and my foreman." "You weren't following Drew Mathers yesterday afternoon?" I thought about how to answer that. Technically, Frankie and I had been following Drew, but we'd been careful to stay on public property and maintain our distance. "I was running errands yesterday. If Drew happened to be in the same place as I was, that's coincidence." Martinez looked skeptical. "Cal, I've known you for 5 years. You're not the stalking type. But this situation with your wife, it's got people talking. Some folks think you might be taking things too far." "What people?" "Drew's lawyer, for one. He's threatening to file for a restraining order if the harassment doesn't stop." I set down my coffee cup. "Sergeant, I haven't harassed anyone. I exposed my wife's affair at a public gathering, which is my right. If Drew feels threatened by the truth, that's his problem." "What about the text message you sent last night? This isn't over?" I pulled out my phone and showed Martinez the message thread. He texted me first. I was responding to his threat. Martinez studied the phone, then nodded. "All right. But Cal, I need you to stay away from Drew Mathers. No following him, no contact, no showing up where he is. Can you do that?" "I can do that." After the police left, I called Dave Brennan. "They're trying to paint you as the aggressor," he said after I explained what happened. Classic strategy. Make the victim look like the villain. What do I do? Exactly what you're doing. Stay clean, document everything, and let them make the mistakes. What mistakes? The kind desperate people always make. Drew's world is falling apart, and he's lashing out. Eventually, he'll do something stupid. Dave was right. That afternoon, I got a call from Tom Morrison. Cal, you need to know what just happened. Drew Mathers came to my office again, demanding I give him the promotion. When I refused, he started making threats. What kind of threats? Said he'd sue the company for discrimination, claim I was biased against him because of his personal situation. Then he started ranting about you, saying you'd poisoned me against him. What did you do? I had security escort him out. Then I called his brother and told him Drew wasn't welcome on any of my job sites anymore. Guys completely lost it. That evening, I was closing up the shop when Frankie came running in. Cal, you need to see this. He showed me a video on his phone. Drew, obviously drunk, standing in the parking lot of Murphy's pub, ranting about me to anyone who would listen. That son of a bitch thinks he's so smart, Drew was saying, his words slurred. But I'm going to destroy him. I'm going to take everything he has. When was this taken? I asked. About an hour ago. It's already been shared 50 times on Facebook. I watched the video again. Drew was making threats, talking about revenge, embarrassing himself in front of half the town. The comments below the video were brutal. People calling him pathetic, a loser, a drunk. He's digging his own grave, Frankie observed. Yeah, but I want to make sure he finishes the job. The next morning, I got a call from Morgan. Cal, I need to warn you about something. Drew came by the house last night drunk and angry. He was saying crazy things about you and Lila. What kind of crazy things? He thinks you two are working together, that the whole thing was staged to make him look bad. He's convinced there's some conspiracy against him. That's paranoid nonsense. I know that, but Drew doesn't. He's not thinking clearly. I'm worried he might do something stupid. Like what? I don't know, but he's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Morgan was right to be worried. That afternoon, I was at the Morrison job site when one of my workers came running over. Boss, someone broke into the supply shed, took about $500 worth of copper pipe. I called the police and filed a report, but I already knew who was responsible. Drew needed money, and copper pipe was easy to steal and sell. The timing wasn't a coincidence, but Drew had made a mistake. The supply shed had security cameras. The footage was grainy, but clear enough to identify the thief. Drew's BMW pulling up to the shed at 2 a.m. Drew getting out, breaking the lock, loading pipe into his trunk, his face clearly visible in the headlights as he drove away. I took the footage to Sergeant Martinez. Well, that's definitely him, Martinez said after watching the video. We'll issue a warrant. How long before you pick him up? Shouldn't take long. He's not exactly hiding. They found Drew at his brother's house 3 hours later. He was passed out drunk on the couch, the stolen copper pipe still in his car. His brother was furious, embarrassed to be associated with the mess Drew had made of his life. I was at home that evening when Lila called. Cal, they arrested Drew. I heard. Did you have something to do with that? Drew stole from me, Lila. He got caught on camera. I didn't have to do anything except call the police. She was quiet for a moment. He's lost everything. His job, his house, his reputation. Isn't that enough? Is it enough for you? What do you mean? I mean, is this the man you threw away our marriage for? A drunk who steals to pay his bills? A loser who's sitting in county lookup while his wife files for divorce? It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Lila. You chose him over me. How's that working out for you? She hung up without answering. The next morning brought the final piece of the puzzle. Rita Castellanos called with news from the county planning office. Lila's been suspended pending an investigation, she said. What kind of investigation? Someone reported that she's been using county resources for personal business. Apparently, she's been using the office computer to research divorce lawyers, and she's been making personal calls on county time. Who reported her? Anonymous tip. But whoever it was had documentation, phone records, computer logs, the works. I smiled. Morgan had been busy. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and Morgan had been scorned by both Drew and Lila. What happens now? Best case scenario, she gets a written reprimand. Worst case, she loses her job. Thanks for letting me know, Rita. Cal? For what it's worth, I think you handled this exactly right. Some people need to face consequences for their actions. That afternoon, I was in my workshop when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Lila getting out of her Honda. She looked terrible, hollow-eyed, thin, like someone who hadn't been eating or sleeping. She knocked on the back door. I let her in, but didn't invite her to sit. I need to know, she said without preamble. Did you set us up? Did you plan this whole thing? Plan what? Drew's arrest, my suspension, the way everything fell apart so perfectly. I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but pity. She'd destroyed everything we'd built together for a man who turned out to be a fraud, and now she was looking for someone else to blame. Lila, I didn't set you up. You set yourself up the minute you decided to cheat on me. But the timing was your choice. You chose to have an affair. You chose to steal our money. You chose to lie to everyone around you. I just chose to tell the truth about what you'd done. She started crying then, quiet tears that she wiped away with the back of her hand. I made a mistake, Cal. I know that now. But does that mean I have to lose everything? You didn't lose everything, Lila. You threw it away. Can't we try again? Can't we work through this? I looked at her for a long moment, remembering the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Young, ambitious, full of dreams and plans. Somewhere along the way, she'd turned into someone I didn't recognize, someone who could lie to my face while spending our money on another man. No, I said finally. We can't. Why not? Because I don't trust you anymore. Because every time I look at you, I see Drew's hands on your body. Because you didn't just cheat on me. You tried to destroy me to cover it up. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm sorry, Cal. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix this. She nodded, accepting the finality in my voice. What happens now? Now you sign the divorce papers Dave sent you. Now you find a new place to live and a new job if the county fires you. Now you figure out how to rebuild your life without me. And Drew? What about him? Are you going to keep destroying him? I thought about that. Drew was sitting in county lookup, facing theft charges that would probably result in probation and community service. His wife was divorcing him. His job was gone. His reputation was ruined. He'd lost everything that mattered to him. I don't need to destroy Drew, I said. He's doing that just fine on his own. Lila nodded and turned to go. At the door, she stopped and looked back. I really did love you, Cal. Maybe not the way I should have, but I did love you. I know, I said. That's what makes this so sad. She left then, driving away from the house we'd shared, the life we'd built, the future we'd planned together. I watched her go and felt something lift from my shoulders. Relief, maybe. Or just the absence of weight I'd been carrying for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Frankie. Heard Drew made bail. You want me to keep an eye on him? I typed back, no need. He's not my problem anymore. And he wasn't. Drew Mathers was a broken man who'd lost everything that mattered to him. His wife, his job, his home, his reputation, all gone because he couldn't keep his hands off another man's wife. I'd set out to destroy the people who'd betrayed me, and I'd succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. But sitting in my empty house, surrounded by the wreckage of my marriage, I realized something. Revenge was supposed to feel better than this. I opened a beer and walked out to my back porch, looking over the neighborhood where I'd become a legend. The man who'd exposed the affair at the anniversary party. The man who'd brought down Drew Mathers and Lila Bishop. In the distance, I could see lights coming on in houses where families were sitting down to dinner together, where husbands and wives were talking about their days, where children were doing homework at kitchen tables. I'd won the war, but I'd lost everything worth fighting for. My phone rang. Morgan Mathers. Cal, I wanted to thank you. For what? For telling me the truth. For giving me the evidence I needed to protect myself in the divorce. For showing me who Drew really was before I wasted any more years on him. You don't need to thank me for that. Yes, I do. You could have kept quiet, tried to work things out with Lila privately. Instead, you made sure I knew what was happening. That took courage. Or stupidity. She laughed. Maybe both. But I'm grateful either way. What are you going to do now? Start over, I guess. Sell the house, move somewhere new, figure out who I am when I'm not Drew Mathers' wife. That sounds like a good plan. What about you? I looked out over my neighborhood, my town, my life. Same thing, I guess. Start over. Well, if you ever want to start over somewhere new, I hear Denver's nice this time of year. I smiled. I'll keep that in mind. After Morgan hung up, I sat on my porch and watched the sun set over the town where I'd lived my entire adult life. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work, back to building things, back to the routine of daily life. But everything was different now. I'd learned that the people you trust most can hurt you worst. I'd learned that revenge was a dish best served in public. And I'd learned that sometimes winning meant losing everything you thought you wanted. But I'd also learned that I was stronger than I thought, that I could survive betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak, that I could fight back when cornered, and that sometimes the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. Drew Mathers and Lila Bishop had thought they could use me, lie to me, steal from me, and destroy me. They'd thought I was just another suburban husband who'd roll over and accept whatever scraps they left behind. They'd thought wrong. I finished my beer and went inside to start planning the rest of my life. A life without Lila, without Drew, without the weight of their betrayal dragging me down. A life where I was free to be exactly who I wanted to be. And for the first time in months, that felt like enough.